So if the president told you to shoot people in the legs, would you do so? Now, you failed to answer this question as well in your confirmation hearing when asked by members of the Senate.
Because I refuse to accept a false hypothetical that's attempting to put me in a corner and make it look like a representative.
At a time when we have more Marines and National Guard in Los Angeles than we do in Syria and Iran alone, would you order our military to shoot at their fellow countrymen if ordered by the president?
I think it's interesting that for 4 years, insurrection was the left's favorite word.
I think we know your answer. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, folks, welcome back to the channel. If you're an American political enthusiast who's absolutely exhausted by the theatrical circus in Washington, you need to buckle up for this one. We just saw a quick snippet of what went down, and honestly, my blood is already boiling. Look, we all know congressional hearings are supposed to be about oversight, accountability, and getting real answers for the American people. But what we are looking at right here in this file, Pete Hegseth shuts down Jill Tokuda's political ambush in explosive hearing clash, is a masterclass in why everyday Americans have completely lost faith in our political institutions. Jill Tokuda didn't show up to this hearing to do the job she was elected to do. She showed up with a loaded script, a political agenda, and a desperate desire to manufacture a viral soundbite. She tries to back Pete Hegseth into a corner with this absurd, wildly out-of-touch hypothetical about shooting American citizens in the legs. It's pathetic, it's provocative, and it's entirely detached from reality. But watch how Hegseth handles it right out of the gate. He doesn't take the bait. He sees the trap, calls out the false premise, and completely derails her narrative before she could even get her feet under her.
Here now recognizes the gentlelady from Hawaii, Ms. Tokuda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I agree we've had many performances today, but what we'd like is some answers. Mr. Secretary, did you invite Elon Musk for a briefing on war plans with China to the Pentagon? Yes or no is simple.
There's been a lot of hyperbole and incorrect reporting around that situation, but we did invite Elon over to come talk to us generally, but there was no war plans being discussed.
Okay, so whose idea was it to invite him to the Pentagon for a briefing? You mentioned you served at the pleasure of the president. Was it the president's will to have him come and be briefed?
Well, as you know, at that time, Elon Musk was leading up DOGE efforts, and we've taken a great investment in DOGE at DOD, and so getting his input on how we make DOD more efficient makes a great deal of sense.
Okay, but don't you think it's a conflict of interest for the world's richest man? Many of the contracts that the DOD is engaged in, billions of dollars of contracts going to his company, and he is, as to your point, was leading DOGE, which was involved in cutting hundreds of contracts, but also becoming intimately aware of the platforms and the requirements that would be given out for new contracts. Did you not think it was a conflict of interest to invite someone with financial interests into the Pentagon to have firsthand knowledge of what they could then bid on for their own, enrichment?
Ma'am, it was just an informal discussion, but I'll tell you, anyone that knows our Defense Department knows we show no preference to any company other than what your capabilities are, and we're grateful for the places where his companies benefit our national defense. So
for a $280 million donation, the world's richest man with companies intimately linked and involved in billion-dollar contracts with the Department of Defense gained access into the Pentagon. So would you say that any company right now that has multi-billion-dollar contracts with the Department of Defense has access to the Pentagon right now? 1-hour briefings with you, personally?
On the regular basis, I meet with many people and many different companies and many different aspects of our defense industrial base to ensure we have the best possible capabilities. It would be imprudent to do
Well, I'm
otherwise.
sure for an investment of $280 million, Elon's investors are quite happy that it's come out into the billions. I want to jump questions right now. Mr. Secretary, on January 6, 2021, rioters and looters attacked federal law enforcement officials, vandalized and destroyed federal government property, and caused an estimated $2.7 billion in damages right here at the Capitol. Would you have sent the National Guard and the Marines in on that day?
Well, unfortunately, President Trump requested the National Guard in advance, and that was...
It took him quite a long time. I'm asking you, as Secretary of Defense, would you have sent in the National Guard and the Marines on that day? We had 140 Capitol Police officers injured. One died the next day. Would you have sent in the National Guard and the Marines?
As I said, President Trump directed National Guard to be there in advance.
And I think you can look at the record of
for
how
whatever
long it
reason,
actually took for
did not
him
happen.
to actually send them in. But it's good to hear that it sounds like you would have sent in the National Guard and the Marines on that day in which the insurrection was taking place right here at the Capitol. Mr. Secretary, during your confirmation hearing, you failed to deny the conclusion that you would carry out an order to shoot protesters in the legs. So let me be direct. Given what we are seeing across the country right now, would you carry out or issue an order by the president for our military to fire upon protesters actively engaging in their civil right to exercise free speech, their First Amendment rights? Would you give that order from the president?
I assume you're insinuating what's going on in Los Angeles, and I wouldn't call
Not just
that a
Los
peaceful
Angeles. If we
protest.
take a look at protests throughout the country, it's a simple question. If directed by the president, would you order our military to fire upon protesters? Simple yes or no.
Ma'am, we
Fine.
have, as you know, and as this committee knows, we have standard rules of engagement that are in place that give guidance to our troops, and they abide by them.
I'm asking what you would do. Again, you said you serve at the pleasure of the president. Is that not true?
I do serve at the
So
pleasure.
if the president told you to shoot people in the legs, would you do so? Now, you failed to answer this question as well in your confirmation hearing when asked by members of the Senate.
Because I refuse to accept a false hypothetical that's attempting to put me in a corner and make it look like a
At
representative.
a time when we have more Marines and National Guard in Los
Angeles
Angeles than we do in Syria and Iran alone, I don't think this is a hypothetical. This is an actual situation that we are dealing with right now. So again, I will ask the question, the last 14 seconds I have, would you order our military to shoot at their fellow countrymen if ordered by the president?
I think it's interesting that for 4 years, insurrection was the left's
I think we
favorite
know your
word,
answer. Thank you, Mr.
and
Chair.
that
I
when
yield
it's
back.
invoked in L.A., they were
Gentlelady yields back. Gentlelady's time's expired.
Wow, just wow. If you ever wanted a clear textbook definition of a political hit job that completely blew up in the prosecutor's face, you just witnessed it. Jill Tokuda walked into that room thinking she was the judge, jury, and executioner, and instead, she got a harsh lesson in what happens when you bring cheap partisan talking points to a serious policy discussion. Let's talk about the sheer pivot of desperation we saw in the full clip. She starts off trying to spin a conspiracy theory about Elon Musk visiting the Pentagon. She's trying to imply that because Musk is the world's richest man and his companies hold Department of Defense contracts, any conversation about efficiency is inherently corrupt. It's a total joke. Hegseth has to sit there and explain the absolute basics of how our defense infrastructure works to a sitting member of Congress. The military relies on innovation and private sector capabilities. SpaceX isn't some random hobby. It's vital to our national security. Hegseth shuts her down completely by bringing the conversation back to reality. His job is to make the DoD efficient and capable, and he'll talk to whoever it takes to achieve that. But Tokuda realizes she's getting absolutely nowhere with the Musk angle, so what does she do? She frantically pivots to January 6th, trying to play prosecutor again. And once again, Hegseth drops a massive truth bomb that the corporate media and politicians like Tokuda love to ignore. He points out that President Trump had actually requested National Guard support in advance. You could visually see her panic in her face the second he said that. Her entire narrative started cracking apart, so she cut him off. That's the classic move, isn't it? The second a conservative starts speaking a truth that doesn't fit the script, the left shuts down the clock. Then we get to the grand finale, the return to the ridiculous shoot protesters hypothetical. This is where Tokuda completely exposes the left's ultimate double standard. For years, they excused, minimized, and defended actual chaos, rioting, and cities burning in Democrat-run areas. But the moment law and order is mentioned, they scream authoritarianism. They try to paint a picture that America is one step away from a military dictatorship. Hegseth's response was absolute perfection. Instead of panicking or giving her the dramatic, weaponized clip she was fishing for, he stood his ground. He refused to validate her hysteria. And that final line? I think it's interesting that for 4 years, insurrection was the left's favorite word. Absolute mic drop. He exposed the entire performance for what it was, fear-mongering and political intimidation. Hegseth showed total composure, kept his cool, and completely destroyed her ridiculous ambush.